as I greet you with Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh from my home here in Gombak in Kuala Lumpur, and as I seek to address you on the subject, the very important subject of Russia, Syria and Akhirul Zaman, which is a part of the lecture that I could not deliver when I was cut short in my last lecture on the Zionist attack on Syria. That lecture on the Zionist attack on Syria has provoked such a sorry response from so many who have chosen to comment on YouTube to the lecture. Some of the comments frivolous, some of the comments vulgar, and some of the comments otherwise sinful, that I have been forced to now take certain steps in order to restore conformity or an effort to restore conformity with the norm given in the Quran, where Allah says, بَعْدَ أَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ قُولُوا لِلنَّاسِ حُسْنًا. When you speak, when you write, when you address, when you comment, do so in a manner which is becoming. And قُولُوا قَوْلًا سَدِيدًا. When you speak, do so in a straightforward way, not hiding behind pseudonyms and so on. There are many ways in which we can approach the subject of the Zionist attack on Syria. In my last lecture, I attempted to examine the validity of the view that a jihad is being waged in Syria. And I used the verses of the Quran to establish that you cannot wage a jihad with assistance from the enemies of Islam, with assistance from those from whom you are prohibited by the Quran from accepting assistance. I use Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse number 51, to point out that the Judeo-Christian alliance, which today is the Zionist Judeo-Christian alliance, which has NATO as its military arm, and Saudi Arabia and Qatar and Libya and Turkey as able and willing and enthusiastic members of that supporting and that NATO alliance, clients of the Zionist Judeo-Christian alliance, are actively supporting and funding and training people who are going into Syria to wage that so-called jihad. You should not be angry with me. No, when I point out that this cannot be a valid jihad, when support is coming from these people, weapons are coming from these people, financing is coming from the US Congress, openly, from France, from Britain, openly. They're doing it openly. And if you accept that support and that help and those weapons and so on, you cannot be waging a valid jihad. Don't be angry with me, this is facts. These are facts that I'm mentioning. But then there are those who say we are not at all in any way connected with these Zionists, Saudi Zionists and Qatar Zionists and Libyan Zionists and Turkey's NATO ally, Turkey the NATO ally. We do not accept weapons from them. We do not accept money from them. We do not accept any help from them. Well, I want to suggest to you that a valid jihad cannot be waged alongside an invalid jihad being waged actually by the enemies of Islam. That's not possible. No thinking Muslim will attempt to wage a valid jihad alongside an invalid jihad. What will happen is that as soon as those who have the upper hand in power, and the Quran tells us it's Gog and Magog, they're the ones who control power in the world today. This is my eschatology. If you differ with me and you hold to the view that Gog and Magog have not been released and they're not the ones who control power in the world today, then could you kindly do something? And I'm speaking respectfully, not in any way derogatorily. Would you kindly at least show some integrity by going and searching for the barrier built by Zulkarnain, which is built of iron and blocks of iron coated with copper, and which should still be standing somewhere in the world today, high up in the sky, between mountains. If Gog and Magog have not been really, don't come with this frivolous nonsense. And I make no excuse for that language. The barrier somewhere underneath the earth, that's Disneyland. That's eschatology. So a valid jihad cannot be waged alongside an invalid jihad. And when those who today are waging the so-called jihad in Syria with money from Saudi Arabia and Qatar, and weapons and men from Libya and from Turkey and so on, when they gain the upper hand, and if, God forbid, they were to succeed, and they were to bring down the regime of the Syrian regime, the first thing that they will do, my brothers, is to hunt you down. Those of you who are sincerely struggling to struggle in the way of Allah without in any way being associated with the enemies of Islam, you're going to be hunted down like rabbits, and they will ensure that you are either eliminated or driven out. So before that day should happen, you should understand from an eschatological viewpoint and a theological viewpoint that not only do you not wage a valid jihad alongside an invalid jihad, but secondly, there is no way that those who are the people of Gog and Magog will not overcome those who are opposed to them in the long run until Nabi Isa alayhi salam returns and they are destroyed. They will always have the upper hand because they are a people created by Allah with power so powerful that none but Allah can destroy them. This is Sahih Muslim. And so for your own sake, I urge you not to seek to wage any valid jihad alongside any invalid jihad anywhere on the face of the earth. And protect yourselves, for tomorrow they're going to come after you like rabbits. Israel wants to rule the world. And the recent Israeli apology to Turkey sends a message, which I mentioned in my last lecture, that they are now ready to provoke what will eventually become the Third World War, or what will eventually become what Nabi Muhammad ﷺ described as the Malhama. There will be Malahim ending with the Malhama al-Kubra. I said that it is likely to be a Turkish attack on Syria. NATO therefore attacking Syria because Turkey is a NATO member. And what they're doing is actually baiting Russia. There are other aspects to the analysis. They have wanted to install a militantly Islamic regime in Syria, a Salafi regime in Syria that would spit blood and fire against Israel in such a way that Israel can use CNN and Al Jazeera to portray to the world that Israel is now in mortal danger, and therefore get casus bellum, a justification for waging the big wars against the Arabs that have been pre-planned. But you know about this analysis of mine. I made this analysis in Sydney, how long was it, 2000? So they have finessed this methodology of how to bring the masses out onto the streets. And this is what is about to occur. As the masses go out onto the streets, the ones who are going to be targeted are the pro-American regimes in the Arab world. The objective? To get one or more of these regimes to fall through massive demonstrations, anti-American and anti-Israeli demonstrations. So in addition to that, what they're doing is baiting Russia. And today, if I may be able to do so, and if my words can reach to Moscow, today we from the world of Islam, about whom the Prophet ﷺ has said to us that we will make an alliance with Rome, we send a message to Rome. They're probably going to bait Russia with an attempt to slaughter the Christians of Syria. In the same way that one Sheikh, an elderly 84-year-old man, was shamefully assassinated with some 49 other people in a masjid while giving a khutbah. Shamefully on you, shamefully. If in your heart there is no regret, if in their heart there is no pain and anger against those who committed this act against that elderly sheikh who was a learned scholar of Islam, I say to you, wait until you go in your grave, and then you will learn to your surprise that you have no Iman at all. None, not even the weakest of all. Because if you had even the weakest amount of Iman, you detest it in your heart. And so attacks on the Christians of Syria, we can expect it. Who are these Christians? We know that there are two kinds of Christians in the world. There was Rome, and when Allah sent down the verse of the Quran, Ghulibatir Rome, He was referring to Constantinople, to the Byzantine Eastern Christian Empire. But then, I think it may have been about 100 years or so after the Quran came down, that there was a split, a schism, and part of that empire, part of that Christian world broke away and went and formed their headquarters in the Italian city of Rome, from where Rome had emerged in the first place to move to Constantinople. And then came the Roman Catholic Church. And so you have Western Christians and Eastern Christians. It is the Eastern Christians that Allah is referring to, the ones who remain in Constantinople, when he spoke about Rome. And Nabi Muhammad ﷺ said that we will make an alliance with Rome. These are the people, and I know that our Turkish brothers and sisters are becoming increasingly angry with me when I point out that the Ottoman Empire was consistently at war with Rome, particularly with Russia. You have to prove to me that in every instance that the Ottomans took up arms against Rome, they were doing so in a manner which conformed with the Sharia of Islam, which prohibits offensive warfare, prohibits aggression, prohibits the use of jihad to expand a territory. Not at all, not in Islam. We never fight except in response to aggression or to remove oppression. We never fight unless it be in response to aggression or to remove oppression. And there's a methodology for the removal of oppression, but we don't have the time to discuss that today. And so Rome is Russia today. And we're going to make an alliance with Rome, said the Prophet ﷺ. Yes, I know that the hadith goes on to say many other things, but it does say, you cannot deny it, that we are going to make an alliance with Rome, and Rome is Russia. If Rome is not Russia, hatu burhanakum. Come on, bring your proofs. And let us argue the question in a very civilized way, in a scholarly way. Rome is in the Quran, and therefore it is from the Quran that we must first derive our definition of Rome. And Rome in the Quran is Constantinople, and Constantinople has moved to Russia. If we are to form an alliance with Rome, then it is with the Eastern European Christians that we're talking about. And the Christians in Syria belong to Rome, not to the Roman Catholic Church. Most of them belong to Rome. There may be some who have their alliance with the Roman Catholic Church, but they, I believe, in a minority. And so if these Christians are attacked and slaughtered in Syria, it will provoke a response from Russia. This can be one of the ways, one of the sinister and shameful ways that Russia can be baited. The other way, of course, is for a full-scale launch, a full-scale Turkish attack launched on Syria. And then when Turkey launches an attack on Syria, because Syria and Iran have a defense treaty, Iran will now be also part of the war, and Iran will attack Turkey. And it will only be a matter of time, I believe, will Russia will be drawn into the war. And so today, we want to send a message from Islamic eschatology to Russia, and to remind Russia that the Bolshevik Revolution did not happen by accident. No. It was part and parcel of a diabolical planning that was meant to stab Russia in the back, and you know what I'm talking about. On the eve of the First World War, they planned for you. From the front door, Britain and France reached out to Russia for an alliance. Britain and France had already made an alliance. And then when they convinced Russia to join the alliance, it became the Triple Alliance. Or was it called the Triple Entente, I believe. But part and parcel, eventually, of that which was used to bait Russia, to lure Russia into the alliance, was the perception of the Ottoman Empire being on its last legs. The Ottomans had been beaten in the Balkans, and they were now vulnerable because of the loss of the European territories of the Ottoman Empire. Constantinople was vulnerable from a Bulgarian attack, for example. And because of that perception of weakness on the part of the Ottoman Empire, the sick man of Europe they called it, they felt that Ottoman Empire was ripe for the plucking. And so they offered Russia, if you will join with us in the alliance, then we will give you Constantinople. We'll allow you to get Constantinople. The whole of Rome had been longing to get back Constantinople since the Ottoman Sultan Muhammad Fatih had conquered Constantinople. And he had added salt to the wound of the loss of the capital city of Rome, Constantinople. He had added salt to that wound in what I declared to be a disgraceful act, and I have no need to change that word at all. I'm fully conscious of what I'm saying. I'm 71 years of age. I have spent my life in the study of Quran and the Hadith, in the pursuit of Islamic knowledge. And so I have some credentials to speak. And it is with full knowledge I say it was a disgraceful act to take Hagia Sophia, the foremost cathedral of Christendom, of Eastern Rome, and transform it into a masjid. Disgraceful. And so that added salt to the wound. It created hatred in Eastern Europe and Russia, eternal hatred for Islam when you did such a thing. It's like a stab in the very heart of Eastern Europe, Rome. This is what they did. And so when Russia was offered Constantinople by Britain and France on the eve of the First World War, the Russians were very pleased to accept that offer. And then the First World War commenced on cue, as though it was pre-planned. In fact, it was pre-planned. When they had offered to you Constantinople through the front door, Russia, are you listening? Guess what they did through the back door? These people who are duplicitous in their conduct, who are deceptive, who speak with forked tongues. And Russia, remember that Israel has a PhD in deception. And Israel is going to act in precisely the same way that Britain and France acted. What they did was to attack Russia from the back door when the Russian troops were very close to Constantinople. And then, in order to prevent Russia from taking Constantinople, which they had offered you through the front door, what they did was to plan and to execute the Bolshevik Revolution the way that they planned and executed 9/11. There is research to be done, but I guess the Russians already know what I'm talking about. Eastern Europe knows already what I'm talking about. The connection, for example, between Wall Street and the Bolshevik Revolution. The connection, for example, between the Americans and the Siberian Railway to ensure that the Russian regime would not have the use of the Siberian Railway, and that the Bolsheviks would be able to use the railway to bring in troops and men. So the Bolshevik Revolution took place at the time when it did, I believe in October 1917, in order to prevent Russia, Rome, from getting Constantinople. This was their duplicitous conduct. This was the double standards. This was the forked tongue. And Russia, you should beware now, because we are on the verge of another world war. And they would attempt to deceive you one more time. I believe the heart of the deception this time will not be France, will not be England, will not be the United States. It will be Israel. When they brought about the Bolshevik Revolution, they did it not only to prevent Russia from getting Constantinople, but for a second reason as well. The Bolshevik Revolution led in 1922 to the creation of the Soviet Union, into the communist ideology. Communism was not created by a schoolboy. Communism is not schoolboy economics. Not at all. The communist socialist economic theories were very, very, very skillfully constructed. It brought about what may be described as more egalitarianism in the economy. For example, the gap between the rich and the poor was brought down, made so small. The Russians today must be looking back at the days of the Soviet Union with nostalgia, because today in Russia it's gone so high. The rich are so rich and the poor are so poor. The gap is so high. They did it because there was some merit in the communist or socialist ideology. But they had state control of the economy and a dictatorial regime. And it was an atheist regime. And its mission for which it was constructed was to destroy the Christian foundations of Russian society and of Eastern Christian Europe. And they wanted to do that so that the Western Christian faith would have the upper hand, would dominate. Because the Western Christian faith and the Judeo-Christian alliance always recognized that Rome represented a threat to them. And then look at what happened in the Second World War. Was it an accident that even after Germany had surrendered, they continued the war and then they stopped the war at a certain time? Why did they stop it at that time? Why did they not go forward? The reason why they stopped the war at the time that they did is so that the Soviet Union would have total control over Rome. All of the territories of Eastern Europe, where Rome was located, Eastern Christianity, so that the Soviet Union would continue its oppression of Christianity in that part of the world. And so the Bolshevik Revolution was a stab in the back of Russia. It brought with it certain benefits, but there was poison with it. Like, Al Jazeera Some things which are very good, but so much of poison. Like, for example, Harun Yahya and all his books. So much of it's so good, but look at what his eschatology teaches you. And so it is very likely we are now on the verge of the big wars. We are at a critical moment in history, and Syria is the center of the chessboard. And it is necessary for the Russian leadership to ensure that they are not deceived. Be careful, be careful, be careful, because those who are you dealing with have PhDs in deception. One last word. Yes, Syria is the center of the chessboard in Akhir Zaman, or the last age. Yes, indeed, we believe that the three main actors of Akhir Zaman, or the end time, are eventually all going to be in Damascus at the same time. And so the battle for Damascus is at the heart of Akhir Zaman. Imam al-Mahdi will be in the masjid. We mentioned in our last lecture that Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam said that the masjid would be barricaded, locked up, the gates, and the Imam will be inside. And that when the prayer is about to start, the Son of Mary will come down from the sky with his hands resting on the wings of two angels. The son, of the Virgin Mary. Do you remember now? We Muslims, we share with you the view that Mary was a virgin. The Quran says about Mary, she is the highest of all the women in heaven. That's her status. That is what links us both, you and I. Our recognition of the status of Maryam alayhi salam, or Mary. And we and you are the only two people on the face of the earth who believe that Jesus will return, Nabi Isa alayhi salam. There is so much that links us together. We should not be fighting with each other. We should now be cooperating with each other. When Nabi Isa alayhi salam, or Jesus, returns, comes down from the sky, with his hands resting on the wings of two angels, he will come down in that masjid in Damascus, not in Rome, not in Washington, not in London, and not in Jerusalem, in Damascus. And when he comes down, the Imam al-Mahdi will recognize him and say, this is the son of Mary. In just the same way that John the Baptist has said, here he is, this is the man you've been waiting for. This is the Messiah. And so history will repeat itself. The divine plan is that of positive recognition. Firstly, through John the Baptist, Nabi Yahya alayhi salam, and now for the second time with Imam al-Mahdi. And the Imam will ask Jesus alayhi salam to lead the prayer. And he will say, no, the people have appointed you as Imam or prayer leader, so you lead the prayer. And after the prayer is over, he will say, open the gates. Meaning that the masjid, or the house of Allah, is barricaded, blocked with gates, which is a taste of things to come. They have already assassinated one Sheikh, Sheikh Muhammad Saeed Ramadan al-Bhuti rahimahullah. Shame on you, shame on you, shame on you for what you did to him. And may Allah grant him the highest heaven, Jannatul Firdaus. Ameen. He is Shaheed, and those who kill him are going to be in the hellfire, because this is not Islam. This is not Islam. And we've just got the report that they beheaded another one and dragged his body through the streets. I do not know as yet if this is a correct report, but it came from the Iranian Press TV, I think it's called. Just came in. If this is also true, then shame on them, shame on them, shame on them. And so the masajid are going to be barricaded now, because these people have a thirst for blood in them that they will do anything. They're getting into a frenzy now. I don't know whether they're going to come after me as well. They're getting into a frenzy. Their blood is boiling. They cannot accept anything else except victory. That we have to bring down the Syrian regime. So you're dealing with the people who have gone mad. When Nabi Isa alayhi salam returns, these two are going to be in the masjid. Two main actors of Akhir Zaman, and the third one will be outside, namely the Antichrist. Every Eastern European Christian knows about the Antichrist, Dajjal, the false Messiah. And so all three actors of Akhir Zaman, three main actors of Akhir Zaman, individuals that is, Gog and Magog groups, these are three main actors of Akhir Zaman, are all going to be in the same place, in Damascus. And so the struggle for Damascus is intricately linked with Akhir Zaman, the end time. And Russia has to be very careful. I mentioned in my last lecture that there is a methodology for the study of the Quran which allows us to recognize multiple meanings for the Quran. That an event took place and the Quran referred to that event, but that does not restrict it to that particular moment in space and time. That the Quran can have other applications as well. And I pointed out to you the verse in which Ibrahim alayhi salam, or Father Abraham, was commanded to sacrifice his son, his only son. At that time, only Ismail alayhi salam was his son. Nabi Ishaq alayhi salam was born later. But that's a difference between us and you, which we attribute to the changes which took place in the Torah. I have a book entitled The Religion of Abraham and the State of Israel, a view from the Quran, in which I have offered a Quranic explanation of these problems that exist between us. It is at that time when Nabi Isa alayhi salam returns and the attack takes place, that we will see forces unleashed which will take us to the end time. Russia has to be very careful, because if an attack takes place on Syria and Russia is lured into the war, our understanding of the Quran is that the verse of the Quran which is located in Surah Al-Rum, or the surah which is named after the Eastern Orthodox Christians, which begins with the verse Ghulibatir Rum, Rome has been defeated, but then goes on to say وَهُمْ مِنْ بَعْدِ غَلَبِهِمْ سَيَغْلِبُونَ. I mentioned in my last lecture that this actually took place at that time while the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was alive. The Rome was defeated, and then within bid'ah sinin, 3 to 9 years, Rome overcame the Persian Empire and emerged victorious. And I suggested that this is going to be repeated in the end time. That when Russia is baited into this war, which is coming, which is around the corner, while so many of the scholars of Islam are either asleep or drinking Tetari, I don't know why, they will not comment on contemporary affairs using the Quran and the Sunnah. I don't know why. When Russia is baited into this war, and the Russians are ready and willing, when President Vladimir Putin was flying back from the conference in Durban, at 3 o'clock in the morning he gave the order for a naval exercise in the Black Sea. 3 o'clock in the morning. And Russia is going to be lured into the war. And we are standing at the doorstep now of that great war, which is going to lead to many other wars. The message we have to send to you today, if our interpretation of the Quran is correct, is that you should not be dismayed by any initial setback or defeat, but that if we are correct, that you will eventually overcome the NATO forces. And that victory will come at the time when you join with us in that alliance, and that alliance conquers Constantinople. This is what Prophet Muhammad has prophesied. Allah's blessings be upon him. He has prophesied that we will conquer Constantinople. It is time for Turkish Muslims to listen to me dispassionately. Put aside all your nationalist fervor and listen with thinking intact. That the conquest of Constantinople prophesied by Nabi Muhammad ﷺ has not as yet taken place. It is still to come. And at that time when it comes, and every Turkish Muslim who despises Turkish membership in NATO, which despises Turkish military alliance with Israel, which despises Turkish economic ties with Israel, where we were buying so many weapons from Israel. You despise that, and you are opposed to Zionism. Every Turkish Muslim will on that day join in the army, about which the Prophet said, لَتَفْتَحَنَّ الْقُنْسْتَنْتِنِيَّةَ, you'll most certainly conquer Constantinople. وَلَنِعْمَ الْأَمِيرُ آمِرُهَا, and what a wonderful Amir or commander that will be. وَلَنِعْمَ الْجَيْشُ ذَلِكَ الْجَيْشُ, and what a wonderful army that would be, of which he will be the commander, which will conquer Constantinople. Not only would the Turkish Muslims be members of that armed force which will conquer Constantinople, those Turkish Muslims which despise NATO, but the whole world of Kurd, the Kurdish people who have been oppressed, those Kurds who have been oppressed, and who still, like Salahuddin Ayyubi, have the love of Islam in their hearts. All of them are going to be part of that army, and we'll jointly struggle to liberate Constantinople. The liberation of Constantinople is part and parcel of the grand scenario which will witness Rome being victorious over its enemies. And the victory of Rome spells the end of Israel. And so we end our talk on Syria, Russia and Akhir Zaman, pointing out that this is not the whole story, but we'll reveal it, or we'll analyze it bit by bit in the days and months, the weeks ahead, inshallah. We hope and pray that you will now go to the website where the whole lecture is going to be placed, and that you will carefully consider the comments that you make, that you'll make scholarly comments, well thought out comments, so that you'll add to the intellectual richness of the discourse, and that you will ask questions not frivolously but seriously, and that we'll be able to delete all the frivolity and all the obscenity and vulgarity. وَنَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنْهُ. And that, inshallah, I promise you that I will from time to time intervene in the discussion to respond to comments being made, to respond to those who differ with me, and I always benefit from those who differ with me. I never seek to stamp out opinions that are different from mine. Not at all. That's not my way of scholarship. And I will also attempt, inshallah, to try to answer your questions. And may Allah bless you all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.